First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you very much for joining us. Wherever you're watching, we do appreciate it. We are live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, as we do every weekday, and going throughout the afternoon, getting to have a little bit longer form conversations on a lot of different things. And today, though, we are talking about 23andMe, and more importantly, the data that 23andMe has. In case you haven't heard, 23andMe has filed for bankruptcy, and obviously if you know what that is, then you're aware of some of that information they could have, but this is a company where you could submit, basically try to find out your genealogy and a lot that went with that. And so there's a lot of information that 23andMe has. What happens to that data? Where does that go? Who's going to acquire that if this company is sold? We're going to talk about that and just some things, some advice, and different ways that you could protect yourself. And to do so, joining us, we have Aaron Rose from Checkpoint. And Aaron just put out a great article just covering all of this and going through it all. And Aaron, thanks for having some time to talk with us here today, too. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me, Greg. I appreciate it.
And I think to give everybody, that context, in case they don't know, can you kind of sum up what it is that's happened here with 23andMe as far as the company and the bankruptcy and everything with that?
Yeah. So we can step back just a little bit too and say, 23andMe, what is it? So it's essentially a genetic research company. So this is a company where you could offer or you could provide your saliva, so your spit, to the company. You mail it back, which sounds weird, right? But you mail this back, and what they're doing is they're actually extracting your DNA, and then they're testing that, and they're using it to map out your genome. So they're able to show your ancestry, your health traits, things that are common markers, okay? So now that we kind of understand that, let's think about this. You're taking your DNA, and you're trusting a third party with it. Now, the situation that we have now, so stepping back to 2023, I should say, we had a cybersecurity breach, so a data breach of 23andMe, which really hurt, kind of their public image. At that time, we saw their valuation decrease pretty sharply. They were in the billions as far as a market cap in 2021, and now they're looking at about $48 million buyout. So if you've ever sat in on a bankruptcy proceeding, they're super exciting, if you can't get the sarcasm in my voice there. But if you sit in on them, essentially what they're trying to do is pay off their debts. So in that situation, the business could be sold whole, so one entire entity, and maybe we see a reboot or a rebrand of 23andMe. But more than likely what's going to happen is it's going to be pulled apart. So pieces of the business are going to be sold off to satisfy those debts and pay those creditors. In that situation, we have so many questions now because I'm sitting here, a customer actually of 23andMe and saying, well, what about my data? What about my DNA samples? What about my DNA information that 23andMe is holding? If they're going to sell it off to the highest bidder, where does that go? Are they going to adhere to the original privacy policy? What is going to be done with my data? Will it be used for further research or something else, some other type of commercial enterprise? So unfortunately, right now, there's more questions than answers, but that's kind of the situation that we're facing at the moment.
So when it comes down to it, since you said more questions than answers, we don't know what they're going to do with that data, and it sounds like whoever does purchase that may not have to adhere to whatever privacy policies that you signed on to. Is that correct?
It's so unclear in the moment because this is one of the most unique situations we've dealt with in data privacy because there aren't really laws and regulations designed for this. When it comes to DNA, that doesn't fall within something like HIPAA. Of course, standard data privacy type laws and regulations apply, but we're not sure. 23andMe has reassured customers. I saw it when I logged into my portal. It tells us that, hey, if this, the data is sold, if the company is sold, that any new changes to the privacy policy, to the data sharing agreements, et cetera, will be presented to the customer and we'll have to agree to them to go forward. But it's a bit loose at the moment because we're not entirely sure who's going to enforce that, who's going to be there to make sure this is happening. And again, more questions than answers at the moment.
So looking at it from that standpoint of all the questions that we have about that side of things, what can customers do about that to protect themselves and their data from being used for whatever other purposes that may be?
Yeah, so I would say step number one is to understand what data you have out there. So log into your 23andMe account. You can easily find the settings. It's under your profile. Once you log in, go to those settings and find the data section and view what you have available. You'll see like your raw DNA is available, as well as things about your ancestry, your family, some health traits, etc. Once you have that, I would recommend to everyone to go ahead and download a copy. because again, we have no idea what's going to happen. You can at least have a copy going forward. Maybe find a service in the future that could utilize that, or maybe you can use some of the interpreted data as it is right now. Now, once you've done that, there's a section where you can actually opt in or opt out of sharing your data with third parties. Carefully review that, make sure it aligns with whatever your priorities are, what you prefer. And then again, this is a highly personal decision. This is up to each person, but you can also request that your data, that your samples, everything be deleted and that your account be removed from their servers. Again, that's a personal choice up to each person.
Yeah, a personal choice to decide whether or not to do that. But that sounds. Is that something that you would recommend, just as someone who's is knowledgeable about all of this?
So I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat for just a moment and say,
Yeah.
yes, I would make that recommendation. I would say to do that simply because we're in uncertain times. There's a lot of gray area here on how the regulations, how the laws are going to apply, what's going to be enforceable, and then who's going to enforce it. Is there going to be a company that exists, aka 23andMe, that is able to actually carry out your wishes going forward? So I can say, at least from my own side, I will be taking those steps and recommending that to my family members. But again, it comes down to the individual, what your essentially your risk appetite is, and how cautious you want to be.
When you look at it from, so this is the 23andMe example, but obviously there's a lot of other companies out there where this could happen to them for whatever reason, bankruptcy or taken over or whatever, what have you. What are some general tips and safety advice that you would have for people out there about their data? For all of the different companies that may have different things on you, especially though maybe some of these ones that are genealogy type companies where it's genetic research.
Yeah, so again, this is one of the most unique situations that we've ever encountered because, I'm going to say a silver lining here is we're boosting so much of consumer awareness when it comes to data privacy. And I think that's great. So I would encourage everyone, regardless if you have information in 23andMe or social media platforms or different e-commerce websites, go and find out what data they have, why they have it, make sure that there's actually a purpose that is useful or valuable to you, how it's being used and where or with whom it's being shared with, because often they're able to share with third parties if you do consent to that. And I would say even, stepping further back in the timeline, when you're signing up for a new website or you're sharing something on social media or you're buying something from an e-commerce website, think about it like think about your data. You're giving it away. There's multiple transactions happening. You're not just buying the next widget. You're also selling parts of your data. So be aware of what that is. And then of course always follow best practices like using, temporary credit card numbers if you can for online shopping. And of course keep your credit file locked, monitor your credit, use things like identity theft, monitoring services and protection services. Those are all great tips, as well as having general, kind of gut feelings about things. Keep an eye out for, of course, like phishing websites as well, which of course love to harvest your data.
So maybe some of those classic, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is kind of things.
Always, always.
Yeah. Does this also another recommendation to everybody to go in and read those EU, LA, the end user license agreements that come in with everything that you sign up for?
That's a hard one because yes, the official answer I'll say here is yes, you should always read those. Now I'll give you the truthful and transparent answer here that no one wants to sit and read a 70, 80, 100-page document, kind of like the iTunes terms and conditions we all used to joke about. So in that situation, there's a lot of resources out there that are actually going to help you decipher these that already might have them summarized. But there's also this wonderful thing, I'm not sure if you've heard of it, it's called artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. It is fantastic at reading very long, boring legal documents and helping you summarize it and helping you understand how it impacts you. So yes, I'd be more than happy to tell everyone, use things like that to your advantage. It's a great tool.
That's great. So a good use for AI and ChatGPT and everything with that. To help you out there. Anything else that you think is important for people to know, Aaron?
I think overall, this is kind of a wake-up call to everyone. This is something that we need to pay attention to. This is an unfortunate situation because, every day, we're in a world now where every day we see a new data breach. I get an alert, my social security number's been found somewhere, my home address, my credit card, my password, whatever it might be. Those things are a lot easier to change. Maybe not my home address, but if you think about, like a credit card number, if that's breached, you go and get a new card, you dispute any charges, and then you call it a day. Hopefully it's simple. If it's your password or your email, you can very easily change those credentials. You can change that password. Unfortunately, we're learning a very hard lesson here because your DNA, as much as I would love to change parts of my own genetic code, I can't, and none of us can. This is something that sticks with us forever, and it is, the single source of truth when it comes to our identity. So I think we need to take that seriously, and I'm hoping we see some new regulations or new regulatory action that might come from this, or just additional guidance that can be, provided to our consumers before sharing data like this.
Yeah, I mean, that regulatory action, I mean, hopefully that is something. I think we all know how slow sometimes that can be. So I would imagine following along with this 23andMe case is going to be one of the big deals. Is there any kind of a timeline on that?
I haven't seen a timeline yet. I know those proceedings take a while. Anything inside of the court system does. So I would say to stay tuned. Watch the media, watch the stories here as it's developing. I'm sure we'll have new information to share, and I'll be vocal about it as well. And just watch for any kind of official guidance as well that's coming out. I know a number of state AGs have been giving their own advice. So I would say stay tuned. Stay alert, and also just open up some discussions if you're not entirely sure. And I'm sure there's plenty of people watching that are like, all right, this is all a bit above my head, maybe. That's okay. Talk to someone start a conversation. Use social media for that. Ask people their opinions and see what they might be doing. Talk to your friends and family member. I think that's a great way if we all kind of collaborate and start talking about these things. It's going to help with awareness, but it also helps, make the decision ultimately.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Well, where can people go read your entire paper here that you put out?
Yeah, so it's currently being hosted on blog.checkpoint.com. So you can go and read the full article that I wrote with all the tips and guidance that I gave there. And then, of course, you'll probably find it on multiple social media platforms at this point.
Well, Aaron, thank you very much for having some time to talk to us and walk everybody through that. It's really, really informative. And I appreciate your time joining us here on Fox 12 Now.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks. And for everybody watching again, this is Fox 12 Now. We get to have some of those longer form discussions like that. And as Aaron was saying, talk to somebody if this may be above your head or you're not sure what to do, talk to somebody you know. Also, feel free to share this segment as well, just to get some more information out there. And if nothing else, lead you back to where Aaron's got his blog right there with explaining this and going through this a lot more. So unprecedented, but definitely something that we can all learn from. And thanks for being a part of this show. We do appreciate it. We are live streaming here throughout the afternoon. We've got more coming up. In just a little while, we're going to talk about the potential for severe thunderstorms tomorrow. So again, we go all over the board here between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. covering a wide range of topics. But we'll take a quick break. I'll talk to you soon. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.